the sixth installment of the Rocky series, and from Stallone's own mouth, this is going to be the last Rocky movie. You know, I think it's a good decision. I'll talk a little bit about the basis of the story. Basically, Rocky's been retired, obviously, for a while now. His son has grown up and works in the corporate world. Doesn't really like his job, gets pushed around by his boss a little bit, and pretty much is living in the shadow of Rocky. Rocky has lost Adrian to cancer. She is no longer alive. She's not in his life anymore. He has opened a restaurant called Adrian's in her honor, if you will. Paulie is back working at the meat plant, and he also is, you know, hangs around Rocky in his restaurant. And every year in the movie, Rocky visits Adrian's grave, and every year he goes around to the different spots where he had great times and great memories with Adrian, and he brings Paulie with him. Well, Paulie gets sick of it and, you know, pretty much leaves Rocky on his own to deal with the memories. At a point in the movie, ESPN does a computer fight with Rocky Balboa and the current champion Mason Dixon, and the computer fight says that Rocky would win. And so Rocky feels like he's got a lot of leftover stuff in his basement, as he calls it, and decides to train. Convinces his son to start believing in himself, and basically his son quits his job and comes to start helping him train. The trainer from Rocky IV, the black guy that trains Rocky, we'll get to him in a minute, trains him again. There's also a cool little story with a girl named Little Marie. Well, that's what he called her, Little Marie, from the first Rocky, where she basically told him to, her line was, "Screw you, creepo," because he tried to help her because she was kind of, you know, a troubled teen, or not a troubled kid, and she didn't want to listen to anybody. She was kind of a, you know, just kind of a jerk kid. And so he meets her again in this movie. She's working at a bar, and kind of takes her under his wing. You know, I think at one point they wanted to make her a romantic interest for him, but they felt that that was going to be a slap in the face to Adrian, so they did not. So she's, you know, just kind of under his wing, and he helps her, gives her a job, and things like that. Paulie ends up losing his job and comes to work for Rocky as he trains to fight Mason Dixon. And he trains and goes into the ring, and kind of reminiscent to the first Rocky, the goal is not really to win the fight, but to last and to survive. And they brought that feeling back, and he goes the entire fight, loses on a split decision, but goes out with a bang. Basically, that's the synopsis really quick for you there. I like the fact that they shot the movie in HD using HBO graphics. What they did is they went in after an HBO fight and filmed that fight, or in the middle of a HBO production, used their stages, used their cameras, used everything. So it looks like an HBO fight, and that's the way Stallone wanted it. And I appreciate that because I never missed an HBO championship boxing fight. So I love that. Problems with the movie, you know, well, I'll go over the good stuff first. I liked everybody. I liked Paulie. Paulie did a good job. Good dialogue with Paulie. There's a couple really good heartfelt scenes with Paulie where Stallone actually tears up, and it was really moving. I liked the character of Marie. I thought she had to be in there because it had to be some sort of a female influence or role in the movie. So I liked her role. And he actually ends up befriending her son and ends up buying a dog with him and kind of tries to be a father figure because he doesn't really have a dad because he took off. So I like those characters. Stallone's son. I like his character in the movie. I thought he did a good job. He seemed kind of hopeless and helpless at times and whiny kind of, but you know, he was very whiny in Rocky V, if you remember. Overall, I loved it. Again, Rocky has some really good dialogue with him. Some of the best lines and most inspirational lines I've ever heard in my life come from a Rocky movie or Sylvester Stallone movie, period, are in that scene with him and his son, where he tells him not to quit, and quitters are losers, basically, and to get what he can out of life. And really is inspiring. And it's really my favorite scene in the whole movie is that scene with him and his son. That is my favorite scene in the movie. Antonio Tarver plays Mason Dixon. In my perfect world, now hear me out, I would have picked Mike Tyson to play the role. I would have loved to see Mike Tyson as almost like how Rocky was in Rocky 3. He'd been undefeated for a while, maybe a little bit more of an age champion, takes Rocky basically for granted. He could be a little bit more of a villain. They didn't want to villainize Mason Dixon for some weird reason. I think it would have worked, though. If it was Tyson, you had to probably cut back his lines because he wouldn't have been as convincing in his dialogue. But I think it would have been really cool, and then if Rocky fought him and beat him in the end, it would have been awesome. But like I said, in my perfect world, that's what it would have been. Or a Lennox Lewis, or maybe one of the current heavyweight champions, one of the Klitschko brothers. Would have been really cool. Maybe it would have had almost like a Rocky IV type feel. But that's me. He was not the best choice. He was okay. He did a pretty good job. I mean, he doesn't act. I mean, this is his first movie he's ever acted in. He did pretty good for a first movie on this big of a stage. And he also was a real fighter. He was the light heavyweight championship of the world. I'll give you a back story if you don't know anything about Antonio Tarver. He was the light heavyweight champion of the world. He was the first guy ever to knock out Roy Jones Jr. Actually, pretty much the first one ever to beat him. Roy Jones had lost a disqualification a few fights earlier against a guy named Montel Griffin. He was knocking him out, and he went to a knee, and he hit him once after he was down. They disqualified Roy. So he never really lost. Antonio Tarver was the first one to beat him. He actually beat him twice. He also had a fight with Bernard Hopkins. So he had some big fights. He was one of the best light heavyweights to come around in a long time. So he was a really good fighter. So I understand why Stallone picked him, because at the time, this was after he had knocked out Roy Jones Jr. and stuff like that. It was pretty much at the top of his game. But, you know, I mean, if you look at him in the movie, I mean, Sylvester Stallone is in better shape than him. That's one of the things that bothered me. I looked at him and like, dude, he's not even in shape. Like, I don't know if that's what they were going for or not, but Antonio Tarver never really has been real cut anyway. But I kind of didn't like that part. I love the training montage. Was one of the best training montages I've ever seen. I love that they brought that back. That was awesome. Other things I loved about the movie was the score. The score was great. It just took you back to all the old Rockies. The real hero in this movie is Sylvester Stallone. He played the Rocky part to a T. He was inspiring. It was just a great performance by him. And it was great to see the Rocky franchise ended on a great note. So overall, a fantastic movie. One of my favorites. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give it a 10. If I could give it an 11, I would. I give it a 10. And I really love this movie, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you haven't seen it, wow. But it's out on Blu-ray, and I got it on Blu-ray. It looks and sounds awesome, so get it on Blu-ray. We'll be back.